Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Arrival. Sci-fi cinema has changed a lot over the years, and the previous era, or maybe the first real era of major Hollywood productions of science fiction, other than like B movies, which weren't really made by Hollywood, that was an independent anyway, that doesn't matter, but the big studio production science fiction films were films about ideas. They couldn't do the big actiony sci-fi stuff that we're known for today, budget-wise and special effects-wise, but also that's not the kind of science fiction films they were making. From 2001 to Fantastic Voyage to Close Encounters, even something like Contact, more recently sort of, they're about going into the ideas of science fiction and using understanding. And a lot of those ideas of going through and coldly understanding what's going on, and a lot of those ideas about science fiction and doing science fiction in a very intelligent, adult way is something that's very alive in Arrival. But also that idea of hardcore science fiction and optimism that you'd see in Gene Roddenberry. It's amazing to see a Hollywood film want to go back to that, and go back to that in a way that I really haven't seen someone do. This film feels very post-2001. It feels very much from a different time, but it also feels very now, and it feels like something I really needed this week, and something that shows a sense of optimism, the idea of changing and getting better with technology, but also the thrill of understanding new and brighter concepts through technology and how much further that can possibly take us are all alive in Arrival, even if most of it they're really trying to understand and talk about knowledge and get somewhere with knowledge. Even if the world around these characters is trying to stop that, they know that their optimism and their quest for knowledge and be able to speak to these aliens is really their paramount concern, and how they're able to get to that and get to that understanding and bridge that gap and come to a better sense of knowledge is really what makes this film a very unique science fiction film at this time, even though it feels like something that has been done before. But to have a major studio make a science fiction film like this is risky and different, but also shows a matter of intelligence and understanding that I really didn't think I would see from a major Hollywood studio at any point in 2016. After 12 alien spacecrafts hover around the world in different locations, they're not correlated. Some are large cities, some are not, in random places. The one in America is in Montana. They need to find a way to communicate with these aliens, so they bring in linguists, played by Amy Adams, and a mathematician, played by Jeremy Renner. And as Amy Adams is a linguist, is one of the best in the world, they bring her in and she starts to make some headway and actually starts communicating with these aliens and hopefully be able to find out why are they here. She slowly figures out their language with the help of Jeremy Renner's mathematician, as the US government and many other governments are getting more and more nervous and argumentative and tense about what's probably going to happen to them, and getting increasingly worried as Amy Adams' linguist character is on a quest to understand them. This film does have very much a kind of 70s sci-fi, but it's kind of combining different things. It's very much influenced by Close Encounters of the Third Kind in certain sequences. It's very influenced by 2001, but it's also influenced by like Andromeda Strain type of science fiction as well. It feels like the kind of science fiction where you have a bunch of people debate around a boardroom over what is morally the right thing to do, what is the most intelligent thing to do, things of that nature. And I really love that about Arrival, frankly. It has a lot of hope within it, but it also has a real idea of intelligence being the main concern and being the better way to communicate and show how much further humanity can go with just simply intelligence. And that's a core belief in science fiction. I think sci-fi cinema's changed so much because now it means things like superhero movies and big blockbusters and things of that nature with major movie stars and explosions, and it used to really be about ideas, and that's something I think that earlier older Doctor Who really, and Star Trek had, or even the Twilight Zone, what Rod Sterling did. It would be about ideas and leaving you thinking about those ideas, and the thesis of it would be about those ideas. Arrival almost clings to its thesis in a way that you understand exactly what's playing with. And what it's saying about language and even film language is incredibly interesting. How important it is to communicate, how important it is to talk to one another and understand one another, and how empathy is so important within that communication. And I really love that about this film. I think it does it so well, because I haven't seen a science fiction film that's just smarter and more adult in a really long time and actually pull it off. I think a lot of people want to make this big mind-changing kind of science fiction film, and most of them really fail. They're trying to make a huge point, but then when they get to that point, it doesn't exactly land. And Arrival has a great point to it and a great optimism to it, and really aligns itself in a great science fiction tradition. You know, I almost think like a great sci-fi writer wrote it. I know Ted Chiang, it's based on his short story Story of Your Life, although apparently some people say it improves the story, some people say it's different. I never read the story, and I don't know much about that writer, but it feels like it should be in a great science fiction canon. And I do think it's a very good sci-fi movie. I really like it as a science fiction film. It's very much alive within all those ideas and bringing you to a sense of understanding. It's bringing you to feel that through technology, humanity could be better, and we could reach another plane of understanding and intelligence. And that hopefulness of science fiction, which was very much in Gene Roddenberry's stuff, I think is very much alive in Arrival. Denis Villeneuve, I think, who directed Sicario and Prisoners. I'm never sure how I feel about him, because I almost don't like some of his other movies like Enemy and Prisoners, but I really like Sicario a lot. And what he's saying with film language, and having both in Sicario and this, like these female protagonists who are very much thrown into these situations and don't know exactly what's going on, and he plays with how you usually use that kind of character in a film structure, and even plays with the shots in ways that are incredibly interesting in both this and Sicario. And I'm starting to have more and more respect for him as a filmmaker. There's not many filmmakers who I change my mind about and end up making such great work. I can't like kind of deny them, but he's certainly one of them. As much as Sicario was doing something interesting with an action film and almost in a Western way, it's interesting that a lot of his films call back to the past and take a past genre and really bring it to 2016 in a way that I don't think a lot of filmmakers could. He's not calling to mind like Tarantino or something, or a lot of filmmakers usually do in a very postmodern way. I mean, he is doing things in a postmodern way, but doing film in a way that I think a lot of people would be afraid and probably wouldn't do them. And as Sicario is a very grown-up kind of action film, very influenced by the Western, but playing with that structure. Arrival is playing with its structure as well in a very science fiction kind of a way, but it's also playing with the idea of a character being thrown into this situation and not really knowing enough about it, and a lot of information being hidden. He's very smart about the kind of information he gives you, and this is also a very well shot film. His last two films were shot by Roger Deakins, who's of course one of the masters of cinematography right now, but this was shot by Bradford Young, who did an amazing job. It's starting to make me think Denis Villeneuve has a real eye for the camera, because it's one thing to say a great DB can make a movie look amazing. That's usually true. If you have a director who really knows how to use that DP, that can make all the difference. You can look at what he made these two films with Roger Deakins back to back, which regardless of what I thought of Prisoners, both of them were very gorgeous, and it kind of shows me maybe he learned a lot from Roger Deakins. But you look at a lot of filmmakers, and even if they work with different cinematographers, they still have this striking, beautiful imagery. Usually says something about the director and their visual sense to their own films. Some directors don't, but in this case I think he really does. Seeing him work with a different cinematographer other than Roger Deakins, it makes me think he really has a command over the camera that I don't think we were really recognizing, but in this film it really shows that. A lot of the performances in this are kind of more tied to the plot. This is a lot less fun than something like The Martian from last year. The Martian is more crowd pleasing. As I said, this is kind of like drier, more adult science fiction, and I don't know if modern audiences will get with it as much. I hope they will. I think because of that you might take for granted a lot of the performances in this. I think Forrest Whitaker is really great, and Jeremy Renner plays kind of the co-pilot to Amy Adams' really great performance, who really shines in this, and through it you kind of get her understanding of everything. She really has to play with your perception of what you are viewing in the film with her, and she does an excellent job at it. People take Amy Adams for granted, but she's really one of our great actors right now. She's been nominated for Oscars countless times, but I remember seeing her in Junebug and going like, who is that? And she just has an astonishingly great career, and she makes this work so well because she almost like doesn't overplay it. In a movie star way, she plays it so regular and someone who's so into her work, and it's so essential to get a lot of this film to work as well as it does, and I think she plays it almost like so modestly. You almost kind of don't think that character has as much personality, but Amy Adams uses that to say a lot about her as a person, which is quite remarkable. Jeremy Renner, I think, does some of his better acting. We've seen him in a while. I read a couple things and they kept mentioning how around the Hurt Locker and The Town, people were like, oh, Jeremy Renner's like this new up and coming actor, and they're talking about his acting a lot. He's done Marvel movies and he's done other stuff, but he just hasn't really gotten that kind of attention. But it does make me think of him more as an actor again. It's been a little bit. I don't think Hawkeye really certainly helps with that, but in this it makes me like really reassess him. Something I love about this film is its science fiction ideas to it. Being an older kind of sci-fi film, it reminds you of that hope in science fiction and that optimism and those great ideas of science fiction, trying to understand something, and seeing like a linguist and a mathematician try to figure out aliens is like really cool and fascinating. I would watch a documentary if, you know, there were aliens like this and this had happened, about how they were able to talk to them and how they figured it out. And seeing that in Arrival, I just think is just astonishingly interesting and fascinating. But seeing that optimism, I think, is something we'll always need in the world, and something we always need is humanity. And I think this week has been like really bad. It's been really sad and really scary, and I think the idea that we could maybe work together and find an understanding and work together to find a truth of intelligence and finding a common goal to do something truly great is more than I expected from this movie, that I didn't have amazing hopes for. It caught me off guard, but it was something that I personally really needed. And if you are sitting there and you're not sure about hope right now, I think Arrival is that movie that'll maybe give you some, and maybe that's something that can help. Laughing it off and ignoring it won't necessarily give you the feeling that Arrival will, because I think a lot of what's great about science fiction, I kept thinking about Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek, and that was made during the late 60s, which is a very turbulent time, and that brought us together with ideas. And I think with Arrival, it shows us that we could work together, and how important it is to make films that are about trying to discover something new and trying to figure something out. And I think that was really the wonderful thing about this, is seeing a director find science fiction and find the core thing about science fiction. And the core thing that makes humanity so great is ideas and discovering new things, and that optimism that will hopefully push us forward. And that made Arrival probably one of the more different for this modern age science fiction films, but also one of the more wonderful and one of the few big Hollywood sci-fi films that I absolutely think we need right now, and I needed for this week. And it's a wonderful thing to sit and watch, both as a movie and as an experience, and just as some catharsis to hopefully get you through to the next week of your life. This will give you some optimism and potential in movies, in cinema, and in humanity, right when you didn't think there was anything left. So if you have seen Arrival and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.